What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Daily Dime. Nice to be back on here. Two-man show with my guy, Zach. And it's another night where we have both basketball and football. That's what we love to see for these pick'em games. Zach, how you feeling about these games tonight?
I'm excited, man. Obviously, my favorite team has looked really poor through the first 10 days or so of the season here, but they get to go at it again tonight, second half of a back-to-back against Utah, like you mentioned, right? Jets and Texans. So down here in my neck of the woods in Central Texas, I know there's a lot of Houston fans ready for the NFL side tonight as well. And kind of desperate times for the Jets, and maybe that's an understatement.
Yeah. It might be past desperate times. They might just be irrelevant at this point. But I would say you're not the only one whose NBA team looks like crap so far. And I'm actually at the point where I'm relieved that they're not playing tonight because it's been that ugly. So hopefully Paul George and Embiid can actually find the court sooner than later. But until they do, it is a tough watch for sure.
Yep.
All right. Let's jump in. We're going to kind of go with the same script that we've been using, and we're going to start with just our favorite picks of the night. These can be NFL, it can be NBA. What are you looking to start here with?
Yeah, my first one is, and it's actually going against what the model had this morning, which always makes me stop and think twice. But the more I look at this after just liking it on the surface, the more I'm going in on Luka Doncic more than 30.5 points here tonight. First of all, this is a guy who averaged 33.9 points per game last year, right? Finished third in the MVP voting, if I recall correctly. And those stats are way down here to start this year. Again, we're still in a place where, it's just small sample sizes abound, but 26.8 points per game through his 4 appearances so far this year. I think that's going to normalize north of that 30.5 mark as we go throughout this season. And Dallas historically against Houston in the last couple years has done quite well, and Luka individually. In terms of his points, the last 3 times he's met against this team, and Dylan Brooks has been out there every single time. I think we're going to see Dylan spend the majority of his time on Luka. You'll see Amin Thompson get his turn on him as well. But points through the last 3 games against Houston, 41, 47, and 37. And if you're looking to the DFS side too, DraftKings points in those games, 71, 80, and 70, give or take a quarter point here or there. I think Luka looks great. I was kind of hyping up the Spurs-Rockets matchups over the past weekend when they went back-to-back. Those were fun to watch, not from a third-party perspective or a Houston perspective. It was gross for San Antonio. But now you get the other Texas rivalry here in Houston and Dallas. I think this game is going to get up and down. It's going to be contentious, and that's where Luka thrives, man. You think about all the clips we've got to get of him from the playoffs against teams like Minnesota and the like. Like, there's bad blood between the Mavs and Rockets as well. So I'm all in on Luka tonight, kind of riding the ship from a scoring perspective, right? 36% from the field, 27 from 3 so far. The volume is actually above where he was last year in terms of his attempts per game. So Luka tonight for me, and give me the over.
That was the first point that I was going to make, which is like it would be easy to look at this and say, oh, he's down at 26.8 points. He must be feeling the addition of Klay Thompson and not being as involved. He's gone 2 of 17 for 3 combined in the last 2 games. Like, that's just not going to continue. And when he's shooting poorly, like maybe then it's easier for him to say, okay, I'll just play the role of distributor. But even as he's been shooting poorly in the last 2 games, he's still shot 17 threes. So I'm with you here, and I think it's worth noting, like, neither of us like to go against the model. But if there's a time to go against the model, it's early in the season when a team has had a big player added, and it just becomes that much harder for the model to kind of figure things out. And what we do see very strongly in the model is that there's a lot of inverse correlation in the scoring between Luka, Kyrie, and Klay Thompson. So I think more so than I'm interested in what the model has to say about like their actual point projections, I'm interested in the correlation that it tells me that exists between those. So if you're starting with a Luka over, I think I then love the Kyrie under that the model is predicting even more. And so, yeah, we can go quote unquote against the model with Luka, but we're still following what the model is telling us to do, because if you put those 2 in together, the Luka over and the Kyrie under, it still shows a really, really strong play because of all the correlation. So I like that as a 2-play start.
Well, where are you starting out here today?
Well, I really like on underdog, actually everywhere, the Aaron Rodgers more than 33 and a half pass attempts. And it starts with the fact that I just don't expect New York to be able to run the ball. They've struggled to run the ball basically every single game except for one this year. They're near the bottom in adjusted line yards created. Houston is sixth in adjusted line yards allowed. So you take that and you say, all right, well, Aaron Rodgers is now going to have to throw. The pass rate's going to be pretty high. Then you add in the fact that Houston has allowed the ninth fewest deep completions, and you say, okay, now it's a high pass rate and it's a lot of short passes. They're not going to be able to push the ball downfield, so you don't get those, 70-yard drives on 3 completions. It's 6-yard pass, 4-yard pass, 12-yard pass down the field if they're going to sustain drives. And so I just love the over on 33.5 here. We've seen it basically in every game except this last one where they were a little bit more conservative with New England. New England had the ball a ton, and they only threw 28 times. But prior to that, it was 39 against Pittsburgh, 35 against Buffalo. And that 35 against Buffalo was actually the game they were able to run the ball effectively. So I think I would put this expectation closer to 40 pass attempts, and I think the line should at least be like 36.5. So I really, really, really love this number.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, listening to you describe the methodology there, the theory and the play. And I agree, again, from the more like casual NFL fan level, like if I'm looking at Aaron Rodgers, the way this Jets team appears to me over these first 8 weeks or so, like he's going to be out there slinging it. So and you can find that right. Do
you have any other picks you really like? Or do you think it's just a really nice 3-pick play to go with the Luka over, Kyrie under on points, and then add this Rodgers pick?
Yeah, so I've actually got on pick 6 specifically, I've got a 6-pick play in already this morning. And I think my second favorite, right? So we've got the Luka more than there. We've got the Kyrie less than. So there's 2. We've got the Rodgers play in there. On pick 6 specifically, though, right, you got to be single sport. So if we're just looking back to the NBA side, and I would feel good about this anywhere. And again, I kind of going not necessarily against, not as heavily against the model here, but just like taking the big names and taking the overs, right? Again, is something that we try to avoid doing a ton of, especially on pick 6. But the Bucks, right, 1-3 to start their season. They have had losses to the Bulls, to the Nets, right? This is a team that is in a get-right spot to me here tonight against a shorthanded Memphis team, or a team that we think is going to be shorthanded. Marcus Smart left early last night. Des Bane left early last night. The Bucks are 6.5-point road favorites here, which makes me think Ja, who has been beat up a little bit, maybe he sits tonight too. We will see when the Grizzlies drop their injury report again, second half of a back-to-back here tonight. But Giannis, more than 28.5 points for me is where I'm looking in the game with the highest implied total on the slate. Big time road favorites here, considering the form that they have been in, not just to start the year, but to end last year, right? Like, I don't have to tell you about Doc Rivers and how his record is looking there in Milwaukee. So to me, for the Bucks, this is a must win. The Vegas line points to the fact that this is going to be a good outcome here for the Bucks tonight, and Giannis leading the way to me. Jaren Jackson or not on the other side, I like Giannis more than 28.5 here.
I like that. There's another pick that I love on both pick 6 and prize picks. I wish it was on underdog, but that is Jabari Smith Jr. less than 0.5 steals. And this is one that just if you're using the tool, whether it's the pick 6 tool or the prize picks tool, you'll see this is one of the best plays in our model. But then you can also just kind of do your own research on it and see why it's so good. In 4 preseason games where he was playing pretty good minutes, and now the 3 regular season games combined, he has 1 steal. Just 1 steal combined, 7 games played this season. And you add in the fact that Dallas has allowed the fewest opponent steals per game, just 5.3. The whole team's only averaging 5.3 against Dallas, and Jabari Smith Jr. probably last on the list of who we would expect to get steals. Now, whenever you're going under on 0.5 of anything, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking. And we saw, like, I think it was Rui Hachimura that we had an under 0.5 steals on either the first or second game of the season for Los Angeles. Yep. And with like 3 minutes left in the first quarter, I can't remember who was driving. Someone drives, dribbles the ball off their foot, kicks it right into the chest of Hachimura. That's his only steal of the game. But like weird crap can happen like that when you're going under 0.5, and that makes it really tilting when it loses. but we should still play it. Just because it's tilting when it loses doesn't mean it's not still really likely to hit. So I do like that one quite a bit on pick six or prize picks. Again, wish it was on underdog. Maybe they'll add it later in the day, but underdog has really been hesitant, it seems, this year to add steals and block stuff. So I'm not optimistic that it's going to be added. But Zach, we did have a question earlier that I think this is kind of the perfect time to get to. HB Cards asking how to get started with pick six, prize picks, underdog. And one of the things we've been talking about that I think is worth reiterating is, yes, you should be on all of them, but no, you don't need to play every single one every single night, right? Like we can judge the slate for what it is and say, okay, tonight's a pick six night. Tonight is a prize picks night or an underdog night. We've had a lot of underdog nights because the big thing there is the 3-pick play on underdog is great, and the 3-pick play on prize picks is terrible with the 6x versus 5x payout. So we've been going to underdog a lot because it's easier to build a 3-pick play that we like than a 6-pick play. But man, like on these nights where you get the island game for NFL, only 4 NBA games, pick six then just becomes that much better because you can correlate and because the payouts are so dependent on your ability to leverage the field. And the smaller the slate, the better we can leverage the field.
Yeah, I think it also depends too, like going back to your point of like, you don't have to play every single site every single night. Like underdog, like you mentioned, has been kind of frustrating, like not having some of those steals and blocks props. Like, I love the fantasy score props. They're being so much more cautious with when they're posting those, who they're posting them for. And so in terms of my like NBA props, I've actually been getting more entries in on prize picks to start the year because I feel like it's been a little bit softer. And again, getting up to those like 6-pick plays that we love to take shots on. And I do have one of those in this morning, and like I'm finding it tougher to build out a 6-pick on UD. So it might be kind of a 3-pick kind of day for me on underdog because like the Jabari Smith steal is not there. Another one that I know that Cards and Anthony in the chat and P-Buck in there, they're going to be shocked to hear me talk about a Victor Wembanyama prop. But I also want to kind of like tie in a little bit of DFS talk to this Wemby talk here. Like I like the more than 4.5 steals plus blocks tonight. He has not been over that number so far this season. He hasn't recorded a steal yet. This is a guy who averaged 1.2 steals per game last year. So again, it can feel kind of just like surface level to be like he's due, but as long as he's active tonight, it's a good matchup against Utah. They're on the road. He didn't play a ton of minutes last night because he looked pretty bad. But my concerns are with the San Antonio offense and Wembanyama's own like kind of aggressiveness or lack thereof on that end. The aggressiveness on defense has not gone anywhere. And so my concerns being on the offensive end, I feel much better going on this Wemby prop at 4.5 stocks, taking the over, because I think if this normalizes to anywhere close to our expectations where they were coming into the season 10 days ago, I think it's going to be hard to find a Wemby 4.5 stock line on a prize picks, on a pick six. And again, but like to go back to the original question, underdog doesn't have this one up either right now. So again, it's kind of finding the props, using the tools on the site, finding the props that you want to play for the day, and then seeing which site, right, provides the menu that fits what you're looking to attack that slate.
Not only that, but Utah has allowed the 6th most steals per game and the most blocks per game so far this season. They were very similar to that last year. So I think I'd be on the over here in a neutral matchup. And now you have like the best possible matchup for stocks for Victor tonight. So yeah, I'm very much on this Wemby over with you. One other thing I would say to HB Cards is you can do some interesting like inverse correlation stuff between your pick six entries and your prize picks entries, your underdog entries, right? Like not everything has to be exactly the same. So for example, on underdog, what we got here is, let me go back to that exact, I want to make sure I get these numbers right. Yeah, lower on Kyrie, 24.5 points, higher on Luka, 30.5 points. For a moment there, I saw on pick six, Luka was up at 31.5. He has come back to 30.5 since, but Kyrie was down at 23.5. Now, Kyrie is still at 23.5 on pick six, but so, right, you can find those instances where you're getting 30.5 and 24.5 on one, 31.5 and 23.5 on the other. And now you can just reverse it because we know the correlation is going to be just as strong no matter which way you're going. So you can have a Luka over and a Kyrie under on one site. And then where the lines are different, you can have a Luka under and a Kyrie over on the other. So I think that's another way in which you can take advantage of the fact that we have all these. Because remember, we're not making one pick at a time. We're trying to hit a 3-pick play or a 6-pick play. In which case, if you hit one of them on either of the two sites, you're going to have a profitable night overall. You don't need to hit absolutely every bet that you make to have a good night because of the nice payouts that we're getting on these different sites. So another way, I think, just to kind of keep things in mind as you're learning to use all of these and not just one.
Yeah, I think that's a good call, good description there. So hopefully that helped provide some more clarity for you there, Cards. Definitely follow up if you want to continue that conversation, either during the stream or in the Discord. You know, we're around throughout the rest of the day. So we've got, like, we've had talked about 5 picks on pick 6 here. The 6th one in my entry is going to the late night hammer here. And Ivica Zubac against the Suns, his rebound line in a few places, including pick 6, is set at 10.5. You look at the model, he's projected for just a hair shy of 12. Zubac is a guy who, on the front end of the back-to-back last night, actually came up a little short from what the new expectation, I think, has been set for him with the massive minutes that he's playing, the pick-and-roll game that has elevated even further with James Harden this year. I remember last season at the beginning, there was reports about Zubac and Harden staying after practice for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, just working on the pick and roll, where Zubac likes to catch it, etc. So with the elevated minutes that he's playing, again, this rebound line to me is too low. It makes me feel good that the model thinks that as well. So that can round out your pick 6 play. You can also find that line right now on Underdog to try to help tie together a 6-pick entry if you want to go above that 3-pick. And it's not there on Prize Picks right now. So you can, again, you can toss in like the Rodgers passing attempts there with the other 5 picks that we had from the NBA side to get up to 6. So again, you love these Monday and Thursday streams where we've got the single or sometimes 2 games on Monday nights now to be able to mix and match with your NBA and your NFL props.
Yeah, agree completely. And I think we pointed this out on Monday, but man, going back to last season, like our track record when we're able to combine NBA and NFL picks on the same slip is crazy good. Yeah. So I don't know if there's like something to that where it's just easier to find your favorite plays and you can find like the highest probability plays possible with the combination of the two. Yeah. But for whatever reason, we have had a ton of success on these types of slates, and hopefully that continues tonight.
No question. Do you have any other props that you're eyeing, or you want to talk a little DFS now?
I don't have a ton. I was looking. One thing I am interested in is combining the Aaron Rodgers higher than 33.5 pass attempts with an under on Breece Hall's rushing attempts. And one of the reasons why I like that is Houston has allowed the 6th fewest plays per game. So I almost think like the biggest threat to the Rodgers 33.5 passing attempts isn't even that they run the ball better than I expect. It's that Houston just controls the ball the whole game and New York just doesn't run enough plays for him to get there. But in that scenario, like the under on Breece Hall's rushing attempts is also just a phenomenal play. And right now, Underdog has it at 1.06x. The problem is they do penalize some correlation there. So it's not like you are getting the full benefit of that 1.06x, but it does help make up for that loss based on the correlation penalty. And additionally, I would say there seems to be a number of boosts available on Underdog. We talked about this earlier this week, but it seems like they're going to be doing this. Well, I guess they were doing it for like the last week of October, maybe. But so this might be the last night to really take advantage of the boosts. I don't know what their plan is for November. But I'm seeing like a 30% boost on any NFL play. So whatever correlation penalty there is, that goes out the window once you add a 30% boost. So I like pairing that Rodgers higher 33.5 pass attempts with the lower Breece Hall 15.5 rushing attempts. The problem, though, is then I have to find a Houston pick that I like. And so far, I haven't found any that I'm a big fan of. So I'll probably have to get back to the Discord on that.
Yeah, you can see any updates there in the Pick'em Games channel of the FTN Fantasy Discord. And that's what I was going to note is as I'm clicking those in over here, you're still at the 23.05x, including those 2 Jets picks in with 4 of the NBA ones. But yeah, if you can maybe find that Texans pick, make it a 3 pick and use that boost that they've got in there. It looks like there's also an NBA only boost as well. So I'm only seeing that on my mobile app compared to the desktop or the web app. So make sure you're checking your mobile app if you are on desktop. From a DFS perspective tonight, Alex, obviously we've got our first run of ownership, first run of GPP scores up. And I know there was an adjustment made to Gary Trent Jr. and his rates from when that update hit earlier this morning to now. So on the next update, we'll see that. So I kind of want to ignore his bonkers GPP score. I do think he's still, on both sides, a pretty good piece of value as things stand right now. By the time we get to lock, I think he's going to fade a little bit in terms of his ownership percentage because I think we're going to get some value out of Memphis. I think there's potential to get some value out of San Antonio on the second night of a back-to-back, get some value out of the Clippers on the second night of a back-to-back. So hopefully we have some news, closer to lock on that. But right below him, I talked about Zubac and loving his rebound line. The model loves Zubac on DraftKings 6,500. The field does too, almost 34% projected ownership on this 4-game slate. If it's in the mid-30s, that's way too low to me. On a short slate like this, with the role that Zubac has been playing, I think he should be around 50%. So if the slate started, I've been saying this every day, if the slate started 5 minutes from now, I would probably be double that 34% number in my 20 max on Zubac. This is a 7K player, maybe a little bit more expensive. I think that's where his price is going to settle over the next week or so. So I want to take advantage in a matchup where I think he can find a lot of success against what is still a pretty weak Phoenix defense. As much as I'm loving the rookie Ryan Dunn there, he's not going to have much to do with slowing down Ivica Zubac tonight.
Yeah, agree. I'm trying to get the updated number now on Gary Trent Jr. His GPP score has gone down to negative 1.6, projected at 25.1. So that rate change obviously made a huge difference for him. So I think you are correct to ignore that one at the top. But yeah, Zubac looks fantastic. I think John Collins is probably another guy we're going to want to bring some of those rates down on. Would you agree there?
Yeah, somewhat, but I'm also Taylor Hendricks out for the season. Very unfortunate injury. Unfortunate for our entries the other night as well. Lauri Markkanen came out early with the back issue last time out. This line to me looks like both Victor and Lauri are going to play tonight on their respective sides, but Kyle Filipowski filled in for Lauri Markkanen last time out. He's going to play a bigger role now with Hendricks out of the picture, but I still think John Collins looks like a very interesting play at his $5,600 price tag on this slate. He's been great from a point per minute standpoint. And the big key tonight for John Collins, no longer center only. Power forward center is huge, especially on this 4-game slate. So I was lower on John Collins than the model was the other night. I think I'm with it tonight. John Collins looks great to me.
So right now we have him projected at 31.1 DraftKings points in 23 minutes. It sounds a little bit like you think we might be a little high on the fantasy points per minute, but a little bit low on the minutes. So the projection is fine, but we still need to bring the rates down. We just need to bring the minutes up a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, again, we can dial that in. I think the rates actually might be still a little bit hot, but they're in line with what he's done so far this season. Right. I just think as we get a larger sample, they come down a little bit. But again, this is also a team that we need to wait on their injury report here, I think, throughout the afternoon to see what exactly is going to happen here with Utah. Yeah. And really, Markkanen in or not, I'm going to have interest in Collins because now I'm not taking up that center-only spot where Zubac is going to take up that spot in a lot of my lineups. And of course, looking potentially for some double center lineups on DraftKings. Now we can get 2 centers and play John Collins. That's certainly going to be a lineup construction that exists in my 20 maxes tonight, at least on DraftKings. Maybe a different story over there on FanDuel, especially with Zubac, who I think priced correctly over there. On FanDuel at center, look to the other side of that game. Sub 6K, Yusuf Nurkic. You're going to need more minutes out of him with Zubac playing 30-plus on the other side. So FanDuel, give me the Sun center.
Yeah, I agree there. I'll tell you what stands out to me looking at these GPP scores so far. We have Giannis, Lillard, and Bobby Portis all with really strong GPP scores. Now, I don't think you want to use all three. I very rarely like to use Giannis with Dame, but 2 of the 3, 1 of the 3, and then there's a sea of Memphis guys: Laravia, Aldama, Conchar, and Morant. Oh, and Jaren Jackson Jr., all with positive GPP scores as well, not projecting quite as well from a value perspective, but still showing that they're going to be under-owned. So I think it sets up nicely for like a pretty heavy stance on Milwaukee, and then you bring it back with at least one of those Memphis guys. And I think that might be a nice way to build as well tonight.
Yeah, and again, we can have, assuming we get Bane and Smart out, right? It's going to be John Conchar. We're going to be talking about Santi Aldama. We're going to be talking about the rookie Jalen Wells. And I do think there's potential for John Morant to sit here tonight because he's already been held out of a game this season. They brought him along slowly with the ankle tweak in the preseason. Starting the season, I believe, with 6 games in the first 9 days. They're coming to the end of that stretch. Not shocked to see Ja sit here tonight. And then we're pushing maybe all the chips in on Scottie Pippen Jr., who has been a fantasy monster in terms of his efficiency so far this year. And his price is so modest on both sites that you would see him probably skyrocket to the top of the ownership projections if Morant does indeed sit. And in terms of like those top end guys, your Dames, your Giannis, your Ja, right? You've also got Luka on this slate. You've also got Wemby on this slate. And I'm going to keep an eye on Wembanyama's ownership on both sites because he's coming in right now, I believe, as the highest owned player over there on FanDuel, near 40%. He's 6th on DraftKings at 26%, just behind Giannis, who's at 30%. I also like James Harden against this Phoenix team and all the usage that he's getting for 9,100. So if that Wemby number stays around a quarter of the field, you know it takes a lot for me to say this. I'm probably going to come under on that number. Yeah. If it drops down into the teens, then okay, I'll play 30% Wemby and I'll try not to miss that first big game of the season. But like I kind of hinted at earlier, watching every single play of the Spurs this year as I have, their offense looks completely broken. Whereas the last 2 months of the season last year, it was flowing a lot better. Wembanyama was getting a lot more touches, and we're not seeing a lot of sets be run. It's a lot of 5 out, which is keeping Victor away from the paint. There's no actions. We're not back screening him into the post. We're not throwing the ball. Like, we all thought that Harrison Barnes, Chris Paul coming into this team, we're going to be able to throw Victor the ball in the post, and it's just not happening. So until I see it, again, I'm approaching the Wemby situation in DFS with a lot more caution than I did to start the season. So again, it's going to be that ownership number, how it fluctuates throughout the day. And that's going to dictate how I attack the spend ups on this slate, because only 4 games, but you got plenty of ways to spend up, and nobody on DraftKings, at least, above Harden's 33% there. For a 4-gamer, that's not outlandish to me. So I'm just hesitant on my guy there. And again, I think for a lot of the people that are tuned in here live or on the replay, that's saying something. It is very rare when I look at Wemby and say, I don't know, guys.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think the ownership would begin to crater right now on Wemby based on this performance so far this season, if not for the fact that the matchup is so good. Yeah. So it's tough there. But I'm not surprised to hear you say you're probably going to be a little bit under on him, because I know it sounds like you like both Giannis and Luka quite a bit. Yeah. And one thing I noticed is I like to look at the worst GPP scores as much as I look at the best GPP scores. Second worst is Kyrie Irving at $7,500 and 24% ownership. So if that continues, where Luka is going to be lower owned than Kyrie, and we already love Luka, then that just makes the Luka play that much stronger, because when Luka goes off that 40 point, 15 assist, 10 rebound type game, Kyrie's going to have a rough time even just getting to value. So I really like that thought as well. And again, therefore you're like, it's not that Luka's GPP score is the best, but the GPP scores are still telling us what a great play Luka is, because when he goes off, one of the worst GPP scores at ownership does fail. So I think that's another potential path that I'm going to be looking at tonight.
Yeah, I like that. And again, like, you can look for additional ingredients in the projections as well. Like, you look at a good GPP score, 2 guys that are very similar in that regard. Like, check out their smash percentage, the fail percentage there, right? Like, Wemby still has almost a 36% smash percentage, which makes sense, right? Any given night, this guy can go for 80 DK points. But I look at Giannis, right? Just $300 more. Also has forward center eligibility, which Wembanyama does not. 49% smash percentage. Again, at a very similar ownership. So just all signs to me at this point of the morning are pointing towards Luka, Giannis, and Harden all being in my build more often than Victor is. And again, it hurts my heart to do so, but I can only go off what I've seen on the real basketball court, and it doesn't look good.
Yeah, I think another really good one to point out, and maybe this is a rate issue on Kevin Porter Jr., where maybe we're taking too much from Harden and giving to him, but two of the best GPP scores on the slate, Zubac, who I know you love, and Kevin Porter Jr., worst GPP score is James Harden. So even if we think that Harden is a solid value, and I think there's definitely something there in the sense that, like, I think you and I agree that he should be projected higher than the 41.3 points that we have him at. But even if we get him to like 46.3 and he projects as a good value, the GPP scores are still going to be pointing towards a fade, I believe, because we have some other guys at lower ownership who do project just as well. And again, that's at lower ownership. But then also because we have Clippers who are shining in the GPP scores. And if Zubac has that game where he's going for 25 and 15, it's going to be a lot harder for Harden to have that game where he's hitting a bunch of threes and getting his own ceiling performance. So there's, of course, some room for them to do well together. Zubac scores a bunch because Harden is getting his own big double-double with 15 assists or something like that. But I think more often than not, when Zubac goes nuts, it's because Harden is being pushed off of the three-point line. They're able to find success inside. Zubac is cleaning up on offensive rebounds, things of that nature. So I think – again, it's just something to kind of – we all can continue to learn how to use these GPP scores in NBA just as effectively as we have in baseball and PGA and now NFL. And I think this is one of the ways to do it. It's not just looking at the individual GPP score, but where are his teammates in the GPP scores and kind of building from there.
And I'm glad you brought that up because just on the surface, like me not factoring in the GPP scores to my thoughts about the Clippers, I feel like those two players are extremely correlated. A lot of Zubac's baskets in the paint are assisted by James Harden. You saw that, like the pain last night of my underdog 3 pick. Andre Drummond with 3 rebounds in his first 4 minutes, can't grab another, and that's how we miss on the Barrett, the Drummond, and the Harden, which was almost at a 10x when we applied all the boosts that we were getting there. So tonight, I want to keep my eye on that because, again, on the surface, to me, those guys are really great to pair together in a DFS lineup if you're going to pair teammates. But again, I'm looking at the GPP scores and what they're telling us. And it's something, again, like you said, as we continue to learn how to use these GPP scores on the NBA side to our advantage, I think this is a perfect spot to kind of take a look tonight and maybe revisit in the morning. How did it shake out here with those two Clippers? And you brought up Kevin Porter Jr. as well. It's just the minutes thing for me from a fantasy standpoint. I love KPJ. He just hasn't been hitting that minute ceiling. Like last night, Amir Coffey closed for Terrence Mann. And if Kevin Porter Jr. can somehow find a way to get up into that 20-minute range, then I'm going to have a lot more interest in him at his price.
Yeah, I like that call. I think one thing to bring up with this Harden and Zubac correlation is it's a little bit tough to tell from the season so far because we haven't seen the scoring explosion from Harden, right? Like one of his best performances was against Denver, 23 points, 16 assists. And sure enough, when he had 16 assists, Zubac 24 and 15. So in that game, they correlated extremely well. But if you're playing Harden, one of the past 2 successes, he has a 40-point game where he shoots 13 threes or something and makes a bunch of those. And in that style of ceiling performance, it's going to be very difficult for Zubac to get there. So to this point, like Harden has been such a playmaker that I think it's doable to play them together. I just think in the long run, so many of Harden's ceiling performances are going to come from scoring. And in those games, it's going to be harder for Zubac. And so when I think about this, one thing I will say, though, is because it's Zubac with the great GPP score, I'm more interested in his ceiling game and what that does for Harden than the Harden ceiling game and what that does for Zubac. And so because the Zubac ceiling can come when Harden gets 15 assists, I will say I think it's okay to play them together, even though the GPP scores right now are telling us to play Zubac instead of Harden.
All this is making me excited for the games to start tonight and to be able to dual screen the Thursday night football. And I'll have, probably a 2-screen NBA League pass up as well. And excited to kind of reconvene tomorrow and see how this played out. I think that's about it for me on the DFS side right now, Alex. Obviously, we'll be in the Discord leading up to the slate throughout the slate here tonight. breaking it all down and waiting for these injury reports to come out, because there's a lot of news we're waiting on here for a slate with just 4 games. So anything else for you here this morning?
No, I would just say make sure you're tuning in 5:30 Eastern for our NFL show. Special guest today, Prop God is hopping on with myself and Two Gun. So 3-man booth. That's going to be a really, really fun one. And we're gonna kind of do everything that we did on Monday, right? We're gonna go through the underdog plays, just our favorite picks, regardless of where they're at. Maybe probably even have a same game parlay that he can share with us after he's been hitting those so well. And then we'll do some pick six discussion, and of course the showdown breakdown, even some main slate discussion for this weekend's game. So that's going to be a great show. 5:30 Eastern. We will see you there.